Hiya. So we're talking about the Hundred Years' War again, but we're not talking about what it was. We're talking about what does it do? Now, primarily it's 116 years of fighting, 116 years of being against somebody. If you imagine a football match, your rivals and things, you're going to dislike them because you're a team against them. And a good way to remember what the Hundred Years' War does to Britain and to France is that it unites everyone with a common enemy. I use that phrase again. It unites everyone with a common enemy. See, you need to know about one battle, and it's quite a significant battle. It's called the Battle of Agincourt. There's a picture of it on my screen over here. The Battle of Agincourt is where Henry V, one of the other English kings who fought during the Hundred Years' War, manages to defeat the French in a really dramatic fashion. Basically, the French get stuck in the mud and all their armour and stuff can't really walk in the mud of this field, and the English just fire arrows at them until they all die. I think the number is about 7,000 to 10,000 men in the French army died, and then English soldiers lost maybe 100 or so, which is just ridiculous, isn't it? So it was a really big win for Britain. Because these battles that happened over the course of 100 years became like legends. It created heroes, English heroes. It created, should we say, French heroes like Joan of Arc. It created, should we say, these figures that everyone looked up to and found really impressive. And it made, should we say, histories of these countries become more and more singular. They began to think of themselves as a unit. England versus France. We are English people, and we are a united England. Even though the impacts of these wars weren't always perfect. You can imagine, I just told you about stuck in the mud. If you can imagine what your country and land is going to look like after people have been having wars on it for years and years, 100 years over. The land was utterly ransacked. There were towns that were emptied. There were fields that were trodden upon. There was no food, right? These countries are war zones, and it's not a good thing for that. It means people were living, should we say, in poorer states of being. It meant people were not living in nice houses. These were not good times for England and France. And even worse, the kings of England and France had to raise taxes to pay for the 100 Years' War. That meant that the people of England who had their houses destroyed by war also had to pay more money. Like, that sucks. And it was a really bad time and a really, should we say, negative point in time for the people of Britain. Bad impact. But as well as that, though, it did have some, should we say, positive impacts. One of them being that, well, the more you war, the more practice you get, the better you get at it. 116 years of war meant that the military got very good at their jobs. It changed the way people went to war with each other. Gunpowder began to be more well used during this war. Cannons and guns became quite prominent during the 100 Years' War because they were more effective than knights on horseback, which had been used for years before. Archers were being used much more over, just like in the Battle of Agincourt here. You can see that, should we say, the world is changing, and England's at the forefront of, should we say, practicing with weaponry. And that's going to come back in the future. As well as this, just like I said before, this is where France wins its country back. France wins and becomes a united France. It becomes a very powerful state, and it's that, in fact, it creates what's called nationalist feeling. I love my country. And it happens for England as well. Even though William the Conqueror took over England, and England and France became interconnected via that conquering, England now had its own identity. It now felt like a country of its own group of people. Even though there was Anglo-Saxon, there was Roman, there was Viking, there was French, all mixed in together, that group of people over the course of 100 years felt like they were a team. And they felt like it was them now as a country looking forward to fight, or should we say, to succeed on in the future. See, England's mindset then changed to be, right, let's see what the rest of the world's about. Let's see what we can do outside Britain. And that's going to come in later, but not in our Conquered and Conquerors section. So to finish off with your catching up section, can you please answer these questions into your book? What happened at the Battle of Agincourt for number 1? 2, what were the consequences of the Battle of Agincourt? 3, how did the 100 Years' War change these things? France and England's land, costs of war, military impacts, and French unity. And lastly, how did the 100 Years' War affect English identity? There's 2 pages of the textbook you need for this lesson, but you should be happy and able to do these ones easily. So please find your Teams page, get this stuff down, make sure you're revising, and good luck. See you later.